Right. Well, it is my absolute pleasure to be here today with Tomorrow Comes the Harvest, who consists of Detroit techno pioneer Jeff Mills, Indian tabla player Prabhu Edouard, and Guyanese keyboardist Jean-Philippe Dari.
Yeah.
I hope I pronounced that well enough. How are you all?
Good, very
Fine,
good.
thank you. Very good.
So I'm really interested in how exactly the band came together, because there was a 2018 album, Tomorrow Comes the Harvest, by you, Jeff, and Tony Allen, on which Jean-Philippe played keyboards. How did we go from there to the band?
Well, I mean, yeah. Tony and I and John-Philippe were touring after the release of the album on Blue Note, entitled "Tomorrow Comes the Harvest," and then unfortunately Tony passed away shortly into the pandemic, and I thought that the conversations and the idea of us getting together was just too valuable to kind of just leave it. So I thought maybe a better idea would to be kind of just pick the idea back up and to kind of restructure it to involve other musicians, and to make each performance very special and very different, and to keep it as free as what Tony and I were discussing it, to just keep it open and just work together to try to reach a higher level of consciousness.
Well, was there a moment when you thought that you wanted tablas and then Prabhu came to mind, or did you know Prabhu and you kind of thought, right, well, this is gonna work?
Well, I mean, he and I we had an experience together many years before with a classical project that I had created called Lost in Space, and I in putting that idea together for the orchestra, I came up with the idea that it could be quite interesting to have something of a musician that would be a kind of a narrator through the story of being lost in space, and like a spiritual narrator, and so here in Paris, we kind of researched to find players that could possibly fill that role, and I came up with the idea of a tabla, and so we did a search to see who might be available, who might be interested, and that led us to Prabhu.
I have to say, it's a very interesting combination of sounds. I mean, basically, drum machine, tabla, and keyboards. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's sort of at the base. Was it like a sort of? Was there ever a moment when it was quite hard to make the combination of sounds fit, or did it just work from the start?
It's a challenge. It was in Lost in Space. It was easy. I was just thinking of Morgan Freeman, and I thought, okay, just imagine Morgan Freeman is playing tabla, and that was easy because the orchestration was so beautifully written, and Jeff, just made space for the moment of speaking tablas. But here, we basically have two people who are using a large spectrum of sounds and frequencies, and in a very percussive manner. Basically, Jean-Philippe is a harmonizing percussionist. That's the tapestry he's creating, and from where he starts to improvise melodically. But basically, when I came in, I saw a very rich environment of grooves, tones, rhythms, and frequencies. So we had to work it out. And for me, as a tabla player, it was very interesting to understand the elements which are vital for each of my colleagues, and then reinterpret my own traditional material.
Maybe this is a slightly stupid question. I don't know as much as I should about the tablas, although I love the instrument. But is there any kind of connection between the way Tony Allen played the drums and the way you play the tablas?
Not at all. But I'm a co-fan of Tony. And actually, it suited me that I was not going to imitate him in no way. I was not going to do anything that he was doing because you just cannot imitate Maestro Tony Allen. And he's so unique. But there are two things. Tabla is used in Qawwali, which is Sufi trance music. And it's very different from the very classical way you improvise and all that. And Tony Allen is for me, is a kind of a Qawwali and a very robust drum player. Like, if you translate tabla into drums, because the way his drums drive the groove, he actually is, invoking, gods and goddesses for you to get into trance. So that's something which really, penetrates my mind when I think of him. So I think of him more of the energetic way he plays, and now Jeff actually, and that's very interesting. His way of developing his set is very actually a tabla player. If somebody indulges listening to the material he develops. Actually, I had a wonderful chance to do that just 3 days ago. I was having a solo overnight. I played in London, and then we after our concerts, my concerts, I just went and I popped up at his DJ set for 2.5 hours. It was fabulous. And watching at him, in tabla we've got themes, variations, and we take from the theme each phrase. And we decide that this phrase is going to be the character that is going to be highlighted. And that's exactly what a DJ Techno Master is doing. So I was very happy to see that actually, not so much in the content, in the repertoire, can you find links, but in the philosophy of playing, you find links.
Jean-Philippe, I wanted to ask, what do you particularly bring to the band?
Oh, officially, I'm the guy who played the notes. I'm the guy who played the chords, the notes, and the melodies. But it's not so obvious. I play rhythmically. That's what I love to do, rhythmics, so I can keep the rhythmics. While Jeff is playing some notes with some synths he has. And it's more like... we play for the others. That's the thing. When I feel some rhythmic vibes, I will be more rhythmical, and I will keep maybe the same, like Prabhu just said, maybe I can keep the same phrase, the same character, and involved in this character. Then around Jeff and Prabhu will change the mood of the vibes around. So yeah, my job is to keep the trance as my colleague,
I think, Jean-Philippe, you once called playing live a real spiritual process. What did you mean by that?
It's funny because last night on the TV I saw a journalist who was saying that all the political people are losing this link with the people, and she said, but musicians are creating this like communion. People. We played last week in Amsterdam, and it was like being in the church, man, or in a synagogue or whatever. It was like everybody was praying the same vibes, It was just the music. And what we were improvising was more a spiritual content, a spiritual sharing, It was more about the spirit than like a technical performance. As we don't plan anything, as we don't rehearse anything, it's not like would I play better this phrase that I played yesterday. No, it's just about how am I really feeling what I play right now, and what I play right now, is it really in tune with my colleague, with Jeff, with Prabhu, and with the crowd?
I mean, you're all masters of what you've done. You've got years and years of experience, but is it still in some way slightly scary going on and playing without ever practicing?
No, I mean, and maybe I, because of my setup and working with machines, and it takes much longer to operate and prepare these machines, more than Pablo and Jean-Pierre. So maybe it's much more risky for me. But I rarely attempt something more than what I'm capable of doing, right? Because I know the consequences, that if it doesn't work, it can be really disastrous. So I have learned that there are, there's really, where my boundaries are, how fast I can do things, how quickly I can, operate certain things. And so once I understand that, then I can, the fear level kind of succeeds a little bit, and kind of becomes less. But because we're improvising, and because we don't know which direction we're going or what we're going to play or anything, I mean, yeah, it's all really a question mark until you're there, and then you realize that it was worth getting to, So, and that just happens throughout the whole performance, and but I guess that's part of the feeling that you get when you're not sure as to where the destination is going to be.
Actually, Jeff, I wanted to ask, you're obviously incredibly good with the drum machine and with production and DJing. Do you play drum kit as well?
No, I used to when I was young. I had when I was in high school, I had like a 6 or 7 piece drum kit, double kick with tom-toms and zildjians, and I played all through high school and a little bit after, but I made like a very quick transition from playing drums into DJing. So I approached DJing the same way that I was playing the drums, and then at a certain point, I just incorporated a drum machine so that I could improvise. Sometime in the early to mid '80s, I started using a drum machine, and so since then, I've just been using it. So,
would you say that you're more of a live band at your core rather than a recorded one?
Oh, very much. I mean, it's we can only do this being live because the very root of the concept is that we don't want to decide of anything we would do. I mean, obviously, that's a funny thing. Jeff would try some great stuff, when we are sound checking, and we go like, hey, this is super cool. Let's go and do that. And he would say, okay, guys, that would be the start. And then because he's a person who feels the temperature of the audience, and he checks the energy of the audience, it's nothing of what we decided to do. And actually it's even better because some days it rains, some days it's sunshine, some days the majority of the people, I don't know, went through maybe a very bad traffic jam, or you don't know what people have come with, and you participate in tuning the audience. The audience participates in tuning your musicianship. So that's why it's totally, it's 200% live, because in the studio, okay, you make a map even when you improvise and nobody is there except the sound engineer, who is supposed to give you comfortable sound in your ears. But when you've got 500,000 people in front of you, and that massive energy comes to you, and you have no roadmap, definitely that live energy is predominant.
See, DJs are renowned for being very good at reading the room and knowing what kind of music to play. Is that something musicians have as well, you think?
Yeah. I mean, well, before DJing, it was bands, and bands used to, play for people basically doing the same thing. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an inherited, skill and trait that DJs possess, and so. Maybe it's a little bit slightly different because we only DJs, we only have to operate just a few pieces of equipment, a mixer and turntables and things, and for the most part we can kind of look at the audience and gauge it. But a musician sometimes, depending on what they're playing, has a bit more to deal with the tuning of their instrument, the certain functions and things like that. But I think that, yeah, I mean, it's more the same than it is different. And so, and I think, just being a DJ for, career DJ and doing it for my whole adult life, it's a very unique skill to have, not just always when you're DJing, but just in life in general. Being able to watch and gauge people and to pay attention and to have a certain type of focus of how to communicate or approach people, or come up with some of the assumption of who they are and what they might want to have at certain times. It's very helpful to have the skill. And I think that especially in this case where we're improvising and we have to change directions, and knowing when to do that and how to do that is really key to this type of concept.
Well, see, I find this fascinating. I mean, I think probably you mentioned earlier that you might see the crowd, and you might see that they're in a good mood, or they've had a bad time, or something like that. What are the tells? How do you know? Is it like facial expressions, or is it something less tangible than that? You can just kind of feel it.
You see, I mean, when we were in Amsterdam, we were at Paradiso, which is a mythic concert hall. And I think we have tried this concept of, the initial concept of Jeff, which was to have a circle interaction, just, turned towards ourselves, and the audience would be around us. And that was, I mean, almost overwhelming, because you get everyone's energy towards you. It's not like there's a stage and then you got the audience there. Okay, I mean, there is a kind of a global, cloud of feeling that comes to you. But here it was everyone's, So it took us some time to really, enter into our own space. And so that was quite significant, how much, interference can happen when there is an audience and when there is no audience. And when Jeff was mentioning about the gears, there is an interesting parallelism, which is that, in the ancient form of classical music in India, it is called Drupad. It's very, very improvised. Hardly one line of, say, 45 seconds is the theme for a 2-hour concert. But what they do is that there is this drone, like, lutes, that's called tampura. They don't choose the raga, which is the scale, before they tune the tampura, because the tampura is very affected with the climate, with the temperature, and the harmonics that come out of the tampura can be very different from one situation to the other. And the raga, the scale, will have a different combination of notes. So you see, I mean, great masters do that. I mean, good student, they decide the raga and they go. But the great masters, my master used to do that. He would, practice for, 5 days, 11 beats tabla solo, and go on stage and suddenly play 9 beats. And so I think there is this philosophy which is actually linking us three, because in jazz, you've got that, when you see Miles talking about, the way he was coaching his sidees, who was telling, now that you know the notation, he would remove the score and say, now play like you have never played before, and so that's there. And it's like Jeff said, when I saw him also on Saturday, you feel that this is a very crucial point of where to start from.
See, your excellent debut album, Evolution, was released earlier this year, recorded live during Nuit Sonore in Brussels. I was wondering, was there a lot of debate about whether you should produce a record? I'm very glad you did, I should say. But did you ever sort of debate, like, no, we'll just keep it a live thing, and then you thought, well, a record would be a good sort of calling card? How did that happen?
Yeah, that was only really the second time that we had performed together, the three of us, and so we really did not know. I mean, it wasn't planned that we were going to release it. We just wanted to record it because we thought it might be valuable at some point. But then I began to see that it was possible to format it into a release, into an album. And so we had only performed in Delos in Greece before that. And yeah, I mean, there really wasn't a lot of detail and a lot of thought into where this band would go. So we captured it, and I, we thought that maybe it would be a good idea to release something so that audiences could have something for reference as we begin our tour and do other dates. They have some indication as to what it's going to sound like. And so we thought that this would be a very good representation of that.
No, it definitely is. I noticed on the record, Jeff, you're credited with editing the record. Was there much editing after you recorded it live? It certainly sounds very, very live. And
because it was all continuous. Like all those tracks were connected together. There was no silence in between them. And so I divided an hour and a half performance up into like 5 segments. So,
Jean-Philippe, I wanted to ask, what you've played with some amazing people. I mean, you've all played with some amazing people. I was looking at some of your CV though. So I wanted to ask, what do you like most about Jeff and Prabhu's playing?
Sorry?
Well, what do you like most about Jeff and Prabhu's playing? What is it in their music that inspires you?
Man, so many things. I mean, maybe the one of the first thing is the confidence, the trust. Mm-hmm. It's really, I guess you cannot have so much freedom when you play if people around you doesn't trust you. So if you feel that people around you trust you, so you're more free. I mean, that's what I feel. So this is why I can really express myself when I play, because I know it's gonna be okay, and even if it's a mistake for me, so maybe it's a new arrangement for them. So that makes the life easier.
Is that something that's happened? You've kind of made a mistake and something really worthwhile has come out of it?
Sometimes when you play, you have like a kind of, how to say, maybe a kind of voice in your head, or maybe it's coming from the crowd, the feeling you can have. Then you say, oh, should I play more like this or more like that? But your fingers, they go somewhere else. So... Oh, that was not the plan.
Jeff, I think you said once, the project is designed so that it carries on when we can no longer play. I was wondering if that was inspired by Kraftwerk.
No, it wasn't. But I'm a big fan of Kraftwerk, and for a long time, big admirer. I mean, it's it's uncharted it's always uncharted territory, and I think after a while you just get used to turning over rocks to see what's beneath them, and then eventually that just becomes the whole purpose of it. It's about discovery. So it's completely, I mean, in electronic music, it's kind of unheard of because everything is always pre-prepared and pre-planned, and you just hit a button and then you kind of dance around until you need to hit the next button. But in this case, and the way that I'm interacting with Prabhu and John Fee, I can play these machines and modify them based on how I feel at that moment. And so it's quite different from craft work and quite different from typical electronic music musician, at least for now. But maybe things will change. Maybe after Amsterdam, maybe a whole generation of young DJs and producers will start program less and start to play their instruments more. I don't know. We'll see. But being, the feeling of being free and not tied to one another and not have to be a slave to a tempo is, it's I guess it's that thing that ties all creative people together. It's that common link that we're all trying to use and to reach for. So.
But do you see a moment, a possibility in say 50 years where there is a Tomorrow Comes the Harvest doing what you're doing, but none of you are in it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that would be my dream actually to see other, especially in electronic music, using this method and producing and performing music, and so. Playing how you feel, and not necessarily always depending on what has been pre-prepared and pre-recorded, but having more of a say into the creative process of what people hear in a live setting.
Do you think people are brave enough to make that jump? Because I think I mentioned it earlier, like however many years you've been playing together. I mean, well, for me it'd be quite intimidating to do that. And yeah, are people, particularly in electronic music, are they brave enough to jump into the unknown, to the?
Well, I mean, we were brave in the '80s, so I can't. We were brave enough to start scratching records and cutting them and doing all types of stuff that we weren't really supposed to, and saying things, and lyrics and things that were, So yeah, I don't see any difference. In fact, I think because of the internet and social media and the way people connect, learning to do things can happen even quicker, and it can be even more exciting because you get information quicker. When I was a DJ and learning how to scratch and stuff, it was only just hearsay. We would hear from a friend that might have heard something that a DJ did something in New York, and from that. We would have to figure it out. We would have to reverse engineer it to figure out how that could be possible, and that's how we learned tricks back then.
I remember as a child being absolutely mystified by the idea of beat matching. Like I could never work out how people could ever do it, and there was no sort of YouTube to go and have a look. But anyway, so you've been playing like kind of quite interesting venues on this tour. It's kind of like looking quite classical venues, kind of jazz venues, that kind of thing. What kind of public has been turning up?
I mean, that's very interesting because this combination is very unique, and I think it doesn't. It's quite. I think it's the first time you actually get an Indian tradition coming along. Urban DJing, and that too an improvising one on techno and beyond, and Afro jazz, and because there has been several experiments done with Indian music and jazz, but not like this, and it takes I think people who are ready to really go beyond your beaten paths and accept that, you are going to meet somebody into the unknown. And the same thing happens with the audience. When Jeff was mentioning about this Lost in Space, which was in an orchestral project, people, Western classical lovers were coming in that huge audience, of Toulouse Philharmonic Hall, and there were, the techno geek lovers. I mean, core fans of Jeff were there too, and some of the people who love Indian music were coming, and I got some feedback that what Prabhu is doing into this thing. I mean, this guy needs money, or what's the matter with him? I mean, they couldn't think that this guy has found that there is something fantastic happening, and he's trying to to go to something which is completely unknown. I mean, lost in space, and that's a very interesting concept. So the courage it takes to us to go into the unknown. I think the same thing has to happen with the audience. They should be ready to remove their preconceptions and just come innocently to listen and open their mind, heart, and ears.
I was wondering, is there a moment when the audience doesn't quite know how to respond at first, when they're sort of trying to work out what exactly it is and what they should do, if they should dance, if they should sit there, if they should stand?
Everything.
Yeah, I mean, we have this trouble in you can tell, but in the Philharmonic halls, when Jeff, puts that beat with those sub basses getting and just, shaking your hips, man, these poor things, they are suffering.
Yeah, some security guys who have to pay people calm.
I think that's one of the most interesting things that happen when none of us really know what's going to happen next, and nobody knows nobody. I mean, we don't know. And we're kind of just floating for like a couple of, for a minute there, and then somehow somebody does something, and then we just change directions, and then the audience picks up on it, and then we're gone, And so, this type of uneasiness I think is quite exciting, this kind of cliffhanger type of aspect to it is something that can't be replicated or repeated, or it just happens, and it'll never happen like that again. And I think it puts value to the experience of listening to live music, So I don't wish for these things to happen, but when they do, it can be quite interesting, memorable.
Is there a moment where you just know it's working each gig? Maybe it's like a couple of minutes in and something happens and you all just know. You don't even have to look at each other. You just know it's kind of happening.
Yeah, we can feel it. Yeah, we can feel it.
But like a particular thing, or just you can just feel that it's working?
I mean, it's like, we've got, those, in the clocks, we've got those wheels, that, almost like they're searching, and suddenly, they just, combine. And that's what we call a groove. We search. That the moment of searching, and there's a great classical singer, in India. She was saying, the good artist is, she was saying the good musician is the one who knows, the good ingredients for making a good, food. But there is a moment before it's not cooked yet, and then too late, it's overcooked. And that moment, you have to be attentive to that very moment. And I think three of us, we are looking at that, moment, which is very important. So that's what we are hunting for.
Well, you're playing Barcelona this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. The tour continues. Sorry, I don't have the dates to hand, but in many, many, many places you can find them. Jeff Mills, Bravo Edouard, Jean-Philippe Darry, thank you so much for taking the time. And I'm really looking forward to what is undeniably going to be a sort of mind-blowing gig.
Okay, great.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.